Red Feather presents From the Archives. Chapter 23, The Vigil.
This one is quite old. The statements on these shelves are a complete jumble in terms of organisation, but most of them are from the past 15 years or so. So I'm not sure if Etho put this one here on purpose for some reason, or if it's just a mistake. At least it's clearly dated. If I'm reading this right, it was written in 1909 from a traveller who had recently returned from Northern Africa. Statement of unknown regarding a candlelit monument in the Moroccan desert. Statement originally recorded October 29th, 1909. Statement begins. I know when I'm going to die. I have so much time left. 30 years, 2 months, and a day. I'm fortunate. I try to tell myself I'm fortunate. It's time to marry yet, to have children and raise them. But I know for every one of those hundreds of days I have remaining, the countdown will be there, lingering, in the back of my mind. I could pray for it to be wrong, but I know it would be pointless. I've seen my candle, and it didn't lie. I was travelling down the western road from Marrakesh some months ago. My party had left ahead of me, in the early afternoon after the worst of the heat had passed. I had stayed behind to have a final supper with our hosts before continuing on. I had planned to meet them in the next city. My hosts had worried for me, travelling into the night. I assured them I'd be fine, but they weren't assuaged. They told me there were strange things along that road at night. I asked if it was anything dangerous, and they said it wasn't, but they didn't sound certain themselves. I told them I couldn't stay any longer, and eventually they let me go, but with firm instructions to not leave the road for any reason, no matter what I saw. For all their cautions, though, the trip started out relatively normal. I wasn't the only one leaving the city, though most of my fellow travellers were only going to the outskirts or a little further. Eventually they all fell away, and I was left alone, though it didn't dampen my mood. The evening was pleasantly warm, the heat of midday having long since faded away, and I passed the first several miles in good spirits. It was well into the night, no one else on the road, when I first saw the lights. They were in the distance then, just a bright blur well ahead of me. At the time I assumed it was probably a town, and I could perhaps find a short rest there before continuing on. Or maybe it was even the city I was bound for, and I'd arrived sooner than I'd expected. As I drew closer, though, I couldn't make any more sense of the sight. It was some distance off the main road, with no path leading off to it, and as soon as I realized that, I was wary of approaching, remembering my host's warning. However, curiosity and hope for a place to rest a spell won out, and I stepped off the road and started toward that bright cluster of lights. It was no town, though, that I came upon, or at least not one that had been inhabited in 100 years or more. There were the remnants of low buildings, here and there, overgrown with desert scrub and collapsed into the ground, but not a single sign of life. My thought then was that the town had been built around a river or oasis that had dried up, and the people forced to leave. Now, I'm not sure what I think. At the centre of the dead town was a monument. It was carved of some pale stone, sandstone maybe, and decorated with what must have been copper. It jutted straight up into the sky, rising even further than I could make out. There were carvings all up its sides, though I couldn't read them. There were piles of toppled stonework surrounding it, signs that once upon a time an even greater structure had stood there. But now there was nothing left but the single tower and the lights. The ground around the tower was saturated with lights, candles all mismatched in colour and size. Many were small, no larger than tea lights. Others were easily a foot tall. Some rested on ancient pedestals and broken columns, but many others sat on the ground. They filled the broken streets of the dead town, radiating outward from the tower, burning bright and fierce. They were uncountable. I should have left then. I knew that whatever I had found, it was something ancient, and something that should not be disturbed. I've never been a religious man, but I had the same sense about it that I would of a church or a mosque. Still, though, I couldn't do anything but draw closer, following the trails of light to the base of the monument, mesmerized. And as I approached, I could see that not all of the candles were lit. There were some dotted in among the forest of lights that sat still, darkened, wick sunburnt, more around the edges and fewer towards the centre. It was clear they hadn't blown out. They'd simply never been lit. There was a breeze, not a strong one, but present, certainly. And yet none of the candles so much as wavered. I knelt to take a closer look at the nearest candle, curious to know what made it so resilient. But when I looked at it, all at once I was looking through the flame, at a life. It was a shorter candle, and through it I watched a young woman in snapshots, helping to raise her younger siblings, folding dumplings in her mother's kitchen, being swept over in a young man's arms, dying at barely 30 from an illness that had laid dormant. And then I was blinking back to reality, still watching the candle burn, its images imprinted behind my eyes. I don't remember starting to cry, but when I came back to myself, there were tears running down my cheeks. Do you understand? They were all lives. All of them. I could have looked longer. I could have looked through the windows of those flames into hundreds, thousands of ended lives. But in that moment, all I wanted was to run. It wasn't that the monument felt unnatural, but that it was too natural. I knew it was a piece of something fundamental, something grown from the world, something human eyes were never meant to see. I stood. I turned to go. My eyes fell on an unlit candle, standing alone amidst the lights, and before I could tear my eyes away, I saw my death. I saw it as an outsider, looking in, as I'd been an outsider observing that young woman's brief life and early death. I saw myself, older, grimmer, a child lingering at my heels, stepping outside to a thunderous sound, and I fled. I had to flee. I didn't want to see anything more. I'd already seen far, far too much. I've tried to banish the image from my mind, but I can't. On some level, I knew from the start it was futile. It will haunt me until it becomes real. Until the countdown ends and my candle burns to life, out there in the lonely desert. There is nothing more to say. Even though the name on this statement either didn't survive or was never taken down, the date alone, if it's correct, is already quite convincing. If this statement was given in 1909 and the statement giver's death was prophesied for 30 years after, well, it would match up quite well with the start of the Second World War. Etho did leave what looks to be some handwritten notes on this statement, which might explain why it was so oddly filed, but honestly, I can't make heads or tails of them. Something about obituaries and a name. I think it starts with an R. Or maybe that's a P. In any case. Yes?
Sorry, I'm not interrupting a recording or something, am I?
Oh, no problem. I was just finishing with this one. What is it?
There's a letter for you from the front desk. Or, for whoever's got Etho's job now.
Ooh, gimme.
From the Archives is a fanfic series written by Johnny 16th Days and Zephaniah Grains, inspired by the Magnus Archives and by Hermitcraft and other Minecraft series. This chapter was performed by Tizzy as Green and Sumi as Mumbo. Editing for this episode was done by Butterscotch Bread, Maxie, CJ, and Curl Manifesto. Music was composed by Noctude. Thanks for listening.